let's get to the players who are on the roster who will be All-Stars. What stands out to you?
What stands out to me? Great question, Jordan. Whenever I see an All-Star roster, the two things that make me think are the ends of the spectrum, the players who have been here 1,000 times and the players that have never been here before. So we have 32 first-time All-Stars, which is cool. But then there's like Salvador Perez, who is being elected to his 9th All-Star game, which is like the 5th or 6th most all-time for a catcher, right? Altuve, I know he was a starter, but like he's already like top 5 in second baseman all time. And so to see these people who are staples at the All-Star game, because every additional game matters when we look back in 20 years at the resume of a player. It's like, think about when, like when Willie Mays passed away, when Hank Aaron passed away, one of the things people say is like, this dude went to 20,000 All-Star games, right? That number is imposing and daunting and impressive and huge. And each individual game obviously makes a difference. In terms of the first-time guys, I mean, to me, it's like the total improbable names that have ended up here. And for me, I just would like to read those off if you don't mind. We know Jurickson Profar is starting. That's a big one. David Fry, okay, DH/utility boy for the Cleveland Guardians. Heliot Ramos, who outfielder for the Giants. Seth Lugo for the Royals. Kirby Yates for the Rangers. Jackson Merrill for the Padres. And Paul Skeens for the Pirates. Let's start with David Fry, which is hilarious. What makes him such an improbable pick? I feel confident that this is the first time that both of our mothers who listen to the show have heard the name David Fry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the best stories of the season. This was a utility type player who a senior sign, a late round pick, who kind of was just the kind of guys where it's like you keep putting up enough numbers as you climb the minor leagues. And this is someone who was not even originally drafted by Cleveland, originally drafted by Milwaukee. But at some point, if you keep putting up numbers in the minors, you will probably get a shot, especially if you can play multiple positions. And David Fry, especially having that catcher eligibility, I would say, is kind of what helped him get to that point. He debuted last year, and then here he is at 28, and just an all-time heater over the first few months. He's definitely cooled off lately. But I think what's really cool, again, kind of getting back to the distinction between player selection versus commissioner selection is, again, if we are to trust what is on MLB.com, which I think we have to, David Fry, a player selection, the fact that he has earned the respect of his players as someone who is relatively anonymous is pretty amazing. And I think that when you compare that to some of the other but I think that's a great example, because some of the other player selections, like Marcus Semien, who is not having a great season, but you understand, even Salvador Perez, who is having a great season, but there are some other catchers that maybe are slightly more deserving. But Luis Arraez, another guy who, you could say by some metrics is not necessarily having as good of a season as some of the other first basemen in the National League for sure, but players respect the hell out of these guys, and that's not that surprising. So for David Fry to be player selected, it shows how much of an impression that he's made on the guys that they've played against.
Right. And it's not particularly surprising that some of these other names, right, like Skeens and Heliot Ramos, there are players who usually, like, the players are just going to vote for the older players, right? There's a real sense of, tenure and seniority that is baked into this process, which obviously makes it is a little bit silly at times, but that's just kind of a reality. Ellie was voted in, though, Jordan, whereas Skeens was a selection by the commissioner's office.
Yes. So that is an important distinction. Brian Reynolds, of course, was already the Pirates representative, and he was a player selection. So, the Pirates were covered. It's not like they needed one in the same way that Ellie is the only Reds All-Star. But man, I mean, again, that's the process of making sure everyone gets it. First they go to the players and whatnot. But it's really something. And I think when we talk about first timers, it's two different categories. It's the guys that we knew were going to be All-Stars at some point. Okay, great. Gunnar Henderson is an All-Star for the first time. Well, Bobby Witt Jr. is an All-Star for the first time. Well, of course. The first will be of 10, 15, 20 times for these guys, and that's great. But the guys who it's kind of a culmination of reaching this point, whether it's a hot star like David Fry or to me, Seth Seth Lugo is, I think, the best example. A guy who has been a major leaguer for a long time and has had success, but hasn't quite put it all together in the way that he has this year in Kansas City. Yeah, I think he's one that really stands out to me in that regard.
I'd actually like to go turbo mode quickly and just fly through these names. I think it's worthwhile for people just to hear and just go very briefly on each of these guys. So I'm gonna go times 2 speed and just let it rip. Tyler Anderson. I'll start with the American League pitchers. Tyler Anderson, Angels. The Angels are bad. Tyler Anderson is having one heck of a season. Corbin Burns, Orioles. Duh. Emmanuel Clase for the Guardians was not great last year, but really has been incredible. My favorite thing about him, Jordan, he doesn't walk anybody, even though he throws 1,000 miles an hour. Third All-Star game for him. Garrett Crochet for the White Sox, his first All-Star game. Logan Gilbert, the only Mariners rep. Clay Holmes, probably worth talking about this now. Clay Holmes selected. He has been absolute cheeks for the last month and probably does not deserve to be here. He was surprised that he was selected. Andres Munoz of the Mariners or even Craig Kimbrell from the Orioles feel like superior selections.
I mean, there's a lot of people, Twins fan, Griffin Jacks. There's always going to be relievers that are left off that are more than deserving because the reliever numbers are so wild now. And this one, especially being a commissioner's office pick, is not great.
It's also weird because I understand fans saying, oh, well, they just want to shoehorn Yankees into the game. I guarantee you that Yankees fans are not exactly enthused to turn on the TV and watch more Clay Holmes right now. Okay? There are 0 Yankees fans on planet Earth that are more likely to watch the All-Star game because Clay Holmes is in it. That is not how this happened.
Yeah.
Let's just be
and
clear.
I would say, right, we kind of made fun of Yankees fans for freaking out when Holmes had that blown save 3 weeks ago, because he had only had one the whole season. It was a second earned run he allowed all season. Well, he has been indeed terrible since then. So I don't know if they have manifested that into existence or if he was bad all along. But yeah, I don't love this pick.
Flying through Tanner Houck with Red Sox. He's been really representative of Boston's pitching turnaround. Seth Lugo for the Royals, who you already mentioned. Mason Miller, the triple-digit king, hardest thrower in baseball, Oakland's only representative. Cole Reagans, who the Royals got last year at the deadline for Aroldis Chapman, who totally bungled the game over the weekend, but Reagans is headed to Texas. Tarek Skubal, Cy Young frontrunner, in my opinion, for the Tigers. And then Kirby Yates in his second All-Star game. The 37-year-old has been sensational this year for Texas. Great example of a player who's voted in by other players. He has a lot of respect around the game. I think he's only allowed 3 runs this year so far in 31 1/3 innings. Moving on to the National League pitchers. Tyler Glasnow for the Dodgers. Crazy, it's his first All-Star selection. He's just been in our lives now for so long. Very deserving. He is sensational. Ryan Helsley for the Cardinals, who has 31 saves, which is spectacular considering the Cardinals have 47 wins. His second All-Star game. Jeff Hoffman and Matt Strahm of the Phillies, 2 relievers who've been vital in the Phillies, opening up such a big gap in the AL East so far this year. Shota Imanaga for the Cubs, Japanese rookie. He was the best pitcher in baseball for 2 months. He's been bad since June 1st, but he was so good over those first 2 months that it doesn't matter. And it's not like the Cubs have anybody else. 2 Braves pitchers, Reynaldo Lopez and Chris Sale. Sale being back here is so cool. 8th All-Star game. He could start. He's an option to start if they're going to go with you've earned it nod, just because he's been around so long.
I mean, eighth All-Star game, he made 7 in a row from 2012 to 2018, right? And then hasn't been there since then. So yeah, Sale definitely one of the stories of the year. And so is Reynaldo Lopez, right? I mean, when they signed him and they're like, yeah, they're actually going to have Reynaldo Lopez start. And we were all like, why? He's an awesome reliever. They don't need him. Turns out they definitely needed him. And he has been absolutely outstanding. That is one of the biggest organizational identification and developmental wins of the entire season, is what the Braves have done with Reynaldo Lopez.
Where would the Atlanta Braves be without Reynaldo Lopez is a real sentence that makes sense in the year of our Lord 2024. Flying down this list, Tanner Scott of the Miami Marlins. He's the only Marlins rep, his first All-Star game. He is going to get traded at the deadline this year and throw very meaningful innings for a playoff team. and he will be very famous and then make a ton of money this winter as a free agent. Paul Skeens, Pittsburgh Pirates, commissioner selection. I think on Wednesday, I want to have the should Paul Skeens start the All-Star game hot take conversation. Not now, though. Ranger Suarez, Philly starter in his first All-Star game. He's been a little bit worse his last 2 starts, but just what a phenomenal year for him. Been a staple for the Phillies in the last 2 postseasons, and for him to kind of put a lot of it together during the regular season has been really cool. Robert Suarez, 33-year-old for the Padres. He's making his first All-Star game. Zach Wheeler making only a second All-Star game, which is bizarre. He is not going to play. I believe that is because he is scheduled to pitch on Sunday, and he had a kid in spring training, and so I think understandably wants to see his child. And then Logan Webb in his first All-Star game, the guy just sponges up innings. Nothing like a sinker baller on a national stage. So it's great because, like, in an exhibition game for 1 inning, Logan Webb does not really get to shine, but they should just have him throw 8. Just let Logan Webb throw 8 in the All-Star game.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly could. That's wild that he didn't. I mean, again, second runner-up in Cy Young last year. Got Cy Young votes 2 years ago. That is really kind of stunning that this is his first one.